Early autumn in a mid-sized coastal city has a particular kind of quiet. Salt in the air, gulls that never fully stop, and wind that moves through new buildings like it's testing seams. I was 43 then, working remotely as a compliance consultant, spending long days reviewing vendor contracts line by line. I booked a month-long Airbnb in a newer waterfront development because I needed predictable hours and fewer interruptions. Concrete construction, secure entry, mostly short-term rentals. On paper it sounded controlled. My routine settled quickly: morning calls, afternoon document reviews, evening walks along the marina, back upstairs before the lobby doors locked for the night. In Unit 4B, 4th floor, end of the hallway facing the elevator, the HVAC cycled through the vents with a steady hum that helped me sleep. If you want more realistic accounts like this, subscribe and I'll share the ones that still bother me years later. I chose the condo for practical reasons: reliable Wi-Fi, in-unit laundry, and a desk positioned toward the window so I could work without moving my laptop around. The host's messages were brief and professional, self-check-in, minimal interaction, which suited me. The place felt staged in the way rentals often do: neutral art, labeled light switches, a printed welcome binder left on the counter with a laminated Wi-Fi card taped inside the front cover. Everything was clean in the uncomplicated sense, not personal. The only nuisance was the smart lock. Every few days it would accept my code on the first try, but fail to release the bolt, forcing a second entry. I chalked it up to a finicky keypad and the faint scent of industrial cleaner that never fully left the kitchen cabinets. On the third night, after a long call that ran late, I went into the bathroom and saw the mirror cabinet slightly ajar. Not wide open, just enough to catch a thin line of light. I remember closing it earlier because I'm particular about surfaces and reflections when I'm tired. I pressed it shut and listened to the quiet click of the magnet catching, then went to bed without thinking much about it. In the morning, I noticed one of my folded shirts on the dresser, the navy blue Oxford I'd put on the right side, rotated 90 degrees, as if someone had turned it to face a different direction. I stared at it longer than made sense, then blamed fatigue and my own late-night autopilot. After that, the shifts stayed small but became harder to ignore. My laptop charger would be coiled differently than I left it, the desk chair angled slightly away from the desk, as if someone had pushed back and not bothered to straighten it. I started taking quick photos before leaving for my evening walk, telling myself it was for peace of mind, the way you photograph a rental car. Twice, I came back to find the thermostat set to 74 degrees Fahrenheit when I'd set it to 72 degrees Fahrenheit before bed. The smart thermostat made a soft whir when it woke, like a restrained inhale, and it always seemed to activate at times I hadn't touched it. The hallway outside for B was consistently silent, carpeted, muffling footsteps, and there were no visible cameras near my door, only the obvious ones at the elevator. If you enjoy slow burn, realistic horror, leave a like. One evening, I was scrolling through the photos on my phone, comparing them the way you compare receipts when something doesn't add up. In a photo taken before I left, at 6:42 p.m., the bedroom closet door was open by about 2 inches. That alone didn't mean much, except I remembered closing it, because the closet light sometimes turned on if the door wasn't fully seated. The next photo, taken after I returned, showed the closet door closed again. I didn't remember touching it either time. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the room, aware of my own breathing in the quiet, and the feeling that came wasn't fear yet. It was timing, movement happening while I was gone, then being undone as if to look normal. The night it shifted from unease to something sharper was the night I came back early. A call canceled last minute, and I decided to pick up food before the kitchen closed downstairs. When the elevator opened onto the 4th floor, the hallway looked slightly wrong. One overhead light was out, leaving a dim pocket near my end of the corridor that made the carpet look darker, heavier. As I walked toward Unit 4B, I noticed the smart lock display faintly lit, the way it looks for a few seconds after someone has entered a code. My door was fully closed. I stopped with my key in my hand, listening. Nothing. I told myself the light could have triggered when a neighbor brushed past, that the lock could be waking on its own. Still, I entered my code quietly and pushed the door open without turning on the lights. Inside, the condo was cooler than it should have been, the HVAC off. The window reflected the hallway glow in a thin gray pane. I took one step, then another, and from the bedroom area I heard a subtle shift, fabric brushing, or weight redistributing on a mattress. Not a crash, not a footstep, just something settling as if it had been still and had decided to move. I stood in the entryway and let the silence expand around it. The sound didn't repeat. That was worse. I backed out slowly, keeping my hand on the door, and pulled it toward the frame without letting it latch loudly. In the hallway, I walked to the elevator and used my phone to call building security. I waited with my back to the wall, eyes on my own door until the elevator opened again. Security checked the unit with me standing in the hallway. They turned on lights, opened the closet, looked under the bed, checked windows, and found no sign of forced entry. The air felt normal again, but when they opened the closet, a hanger tapped lightly against the rod, a delicate metallic note that didn't match the heaviness in my chest. When I glanced at the lock, the screen briefly flashed a line I hadn't seen before. Code accepted, 8:11 p.m. I didn't sleep there again. I booked a hotel that night, packed what I needed, and left the rest in the condo like it belonged to someone else. In the hotel room, the constant air conditioning was sterile, a clean kind of noise that didn't carry meaning. I emailed the host and said I was ending the stay early for safety reasons. The response came quickly, suggesting a misunderstanding with cleaning staff, possibly someone arriving on the wrong schedule. Building security reviewed hallway footage and told me no one was seen entering for B besides me, and that the elevator camera showed the same thing. Me arriving, me leaving, me returning with them. I kept rereading that line, because it implied the door had been interacted with without anyone visible doing it. I saved the email confirmation of early checkout sent at 11:37 p.m. like it was evidence of a decision I might later doubt. Weeks later, the details returned in a quieter way, as they often do. I was reviewing expenses, categorizing receipts, trying to close out that month cleanly. In the Airbnb app history, buried among the ordinary notifications, I saw a smart lock entry I didn't remember. A timestamp in late afternoon, October 14th, 3:16 p.m., when I'd been on a video call inside the unit. I never received an alert at the time. The logline read, "Manual override, owner access." I scrolled, felt my phone vibrate with each slight movement, and tried to reconstruct that afternoon. What I was wearing, whether the HVAC cycled, whether I heard the elevator. It wasn't that I had proof of someone being there. It was that the system recorded access while I was present, and nothing in my memory contained the moment it would have required. I didn't pursue it beyond that. The refunds were processed without argument, which should have been reassuring but wasn't. I still rent short-term places when work demands it, but I choose properties with physical keys now, and I still set thermostats the same way, as if repetition can hold a boundary. I've become meticulous about door positions, closets, cabinets, anything that can be left slightly open and later denied. Sometimes, when I'm unpacking in a new room, I think about that closet door in my photo, open in one image, closed in the next, as if someone had corrected a mistake they didn't want me to notice. If you know someone who appreciates grounded horror told plainly, share this with them and subscribe for the next account. Midwinter, I was 44 and recently divorced, traveling for a week-long corporate mediation assignment that required long days of careful listening. I prefer residential rentals over hotels, kitchens, separate rooms, the illusion of routine. The Airbnb was a renovated carriage house behind a large historic home in an older neighborhood where the trees were bare and the sidewalks uneven. The mailbox at the alley read, Unit C, in small black lettering. The host lived in the main house but traveled frequently, or so the listing said. At night, the radiator pipes ticked as they cooled after cycling off, the sound sharp and precise in the otherwise insulated quiet. If you want to hear more accounts told plainly and without embellishment, subscribe for the next one. My schedule that week was structured. Hearings from 9 to 4, document preparation in the evenings at the small dining table. I checked myself in through a lockbox mounted beside the carriage house door and never met anyone in person. The listing mentioned that previous guests appreciated the quiet, which I interpreted as a selling point. Inside, everything functioned, though the interior doors didn't fully latch unless pulled firmly. The brass bedroom doorknob had a slightly loose backplate that shifted if pressed from the wrong angle. Wind brushed lightly against the single-pane windows at night, producing a soft, intermittent shiver that felt consistent with the building's age. On the second night, I woke without knowing why. The room was dark but not fully. Streetlight filtered faintly through the curtains. I noticed the bedroom door opened several inches, exactly 3, as I would later measure with my hand. I distinctly remembered closing it before bed, pulling it tight because of the latch issue. I lay there for a moment, listening. Nothing else appeared disturbed. The faint hum of the refrigerator compressor starting in the kitchenette carried through the space, steady and ordinary. I got up, closed the door firmly again, and told myself older homes shift at night. Wood contracts. Hinges settle. But each night after that, despite securing it carefully, the bedroom door stood open by morning. Not wide, not dramatically, just slightly ajar as though nudged. On the fourth evening, I folded a white bath towel lengthwise and wedged it against the base of the door before turning in. I wanted a physical indicator, something that would confirm whether the door had moved. In the morning, the towel was flattened, pressed thin against the hardwood, and the door was again open a few inches. I checked for drafts, windows sealed, vents closed, no obvious airflow. I stood there studying the threshold while the muted scrape of fabric shifting against the floor replayed in my head, imagining the friction that would have been required. If you prefer slow burn, realistic accounts, leave a like. Later that afternoon, I examined the doorframe more closely. Beside the latch plate, I noticed faint scoring in the wood, 2 shallow horizontal lines. Not vertical wear from normal use, but lateral marks, as if pressure had been applied from the side. I tapped the door with my knuckle, listening to the hollow response, and then tested it repeatedly from inside. It did not naturally swing open. Even when unlatched, it stayed in place unless pushed. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that the pressure might not be coming from within the room at all. On the final night of my stay, I decided not to sleep. I turned off the lights at my usual time, but remained seated upright in bed, fully dressed, back against the headboard. The digital clock on the nightstand shifted from 2:06 to 2:07 a.m. as I listened to the building settle. The radiator had already cycled, the pipes were quiet. Around that time, I heard a faint metallic contact at the bedroom door, so light I initially thought I'd imagined it. Then the brass knob began to rotate. Slowly. Controlled. There was no rattle, no aggressive testing. Just deliberate pressure. I did not move. The almost inaudible click of metal under tension carried clearly through the room. The door shifted inward less than an inch before stopping, pressing against the latch I had pulled firmly into place. The knob held in that turned position for several seconds, as if whoever held it were evaluating resistance. Then the pressure eased. The knob returned to neutral with a soft mechanical release. I remained seated, counting breaths, waiting for a second attempt. None came. 10 minutes passed before I reached over and switched on the lamp. The room looked unchanged. The main living area beyond the door was undisturbed, shadows consistent, furniture exactly where I'd left it. I did not investigate further. I packed quietly, loaded my car, and drove to a 24-hour hotel without turning on the carriage house porch light. From the hotel, under the blue glow of my laptop screen, I messaged the host. I described the door, the latch, the scoring marks. The reply arrived in the morning, attributing the issue to wood expansion in cold weather. I didn't argue and requested no refund. I only wanted the information documented. Later, while reviewing the listing photos, I noticed there was no interior image of the bedroom doorframe in the current version. That absence felt deliberate in a way I couldn't explain. I searched for an archived version of the listing and found one timestamped 11 months prior. In the archived photo, the bedroom doorframe clearly displayed a small metal reinforcement plate around the latch, standard hardware meant to strengthen the strike point. During my stay, that plate had been absent. My own photos confirmed it. The 2 shallow horizontal lines in the wood aligned exactly with where the metal plate would have been secured. I scrolled back and forth between images, trackpad moving in small, controlled motions. A week later, when I checked again, the listing had been removed entirely. No explanation. No replacement posting under a different name. I still rent private units when work requires it, but I avoid detached ghost houses now. Doors that open inward feel different to me, more vulnerable, more negotiable. Sometimes, in the early hours before dawn, I wake with the sense that something is testing the handle of a door I've already locked. The feeling passes quickly, but it leaves behind a specific memory, the subtle tension of a brass knob turning slowly in Unit C behind the main house. If you know someone who values grounded, realistic horror, share this with them and subscribe for the next account. Late spring, I was 42 and traveling alone to attend my daughter's college orientation. She was excited in the way 18-year-olds are, focused forward, while I felt the quieter shift of becoming less necessary. I booked a townhouse Airbnb near campus for 3 nights rather than stay in a hotel. The neighborhood was modern and uniform, rows of identical beige units with trimmed hedges and evenly spaced trees. I arrived mid-afternoon. Everything appeared orderly, almost staged for a brochure. Lawn sprinklers ticked rhythmically along the sidewalks, releasing a fine mist that caught the light. My unit was townhouse number 17, indistinguishable from the others except for the number beside the garage. If you want more realistic accounts like this, subscribe and I'll share them as plainly as I can. My daughter stayed in dorm housing with other incoming students, and I preferred having separate space in the evenings. The host lived out of state and managed the property remotely. Entry was through a keypad. Inside, a small security system panel was mounted near the kitchen. The living room felt slightly hollow, my footsteps carrying more than expected. While setting my bag down, I noticed one interior smoke detector in the upstairs hallway was missing its plastic dome cover. The base remained attached to the ceiling, wires tucked neatly inside. I assumed it was awaiting replacement. The echo in the empty living room made the house feel larger than it was, but nothing else seemed unusual. That evening, after returning from campus events, I heard a faint electronic chirp at irregular intervals. It was brief and high-pitched, cutting cleanly through the quiet. I paused, listening. It sounded like a low battery warning, something mundane. The chirp seemed directional, always from the upstairs hallway, but when I stood beneath the exposed smoke detector, it didn't sound louder. I checked closets, opened cabinets, even stood still for several minutes at a time. The beep returned approximately every 40 minutes, consistent enough to notice, inconsistent enough to remain irritating rather than alarming. The chirping continued the next night. What unsettled me wasn't just the sound, but its behavior. It never occurred when I stood directly under the uncovered detector. It waited until I'd returned to the bedroom or settled on the couch. I inspected the upstairs hallway more carefully, running my hand along vents and checking behind doors. The bathroom vent grill upstairs looked newer than the others, cleaner screws, less paint buildup. I turned on the exhaust fan and listened to the low airflow hum, steady and mechanical. Later, while connecting my laptop, I noticed the Wi-Fi list showed an unnamed hidden network alongside mine, appearing at full signal strength. It wasn't labeled with the host's router name. I told myself townhouses often share signal bleed from neighbors. If you appreciate slow burn, realistic stories, leave a like. The following afternoon, while my daughter attended a campus mixer, I brought a chair into the hallway and climbed up to examine the uncovered smoke detector housing. The mounting bracket looked slightly disturbed, as if it had been unscrewed and replaced recently. 2 fresh screw impressions marked the drywall beside it. As I leaned closer, the chirp sounded again. I felt it rather than heard it, accompanied by a faint static crackle, but it wasn't coming from the exposed detector. The realization was quiet and immediate. The sound wasn't malfunction. It was active, and it was coming from somewhere else in the ceiling. On the second night, after my daughter returned to her dorm, I decided to test something. I unplugged the router in the living room to see if the hidden network would disappear. Within minutes, the house felt different, quieter, as if a layer of background noise had been removed. I turned off the lights and waited, sitting on the edge of the couch. The alarm panel near the kitchen still read ready. Then I heard a soft thud from the exterior patio door behind the dining area. Not forceful, more like someone leaning into it briefly. I froze. The glass reflected the dim interior, showing only my own outline. A few seconds passed. Then the patio handle shifted slightly, testing resistance. It wasn't rattled violently. It moved with controlled pressure, enough to confirm it was locked. The metallic rattle was subtle, almost polite. I remained silent, watching the door. The alarm panel did not change. No alert, no chime. After several seconds, the handle returned to its neutral position. The sprinklers outside ticked on again, and for a moment I wondered if the sound had been part of that rhythm. But I knew the difference between irrigation and a hand on hardware. I waited until the next chirp from upstairs before using my cell to call the local police non-emergency line. Officers arrived within 20 minutes, walked the perimeter, and found no signs of forced entry. No footprints in the damp grass. No damaged latch. They suggested it might have been an attempted break-in unrelated to the rental. The alarm panel still displayed ready. I relocated to a hotel the following morning. The hallway carpet muffled my footsteps as I carried my bag, grateful for the predictability of key cards and staff lobbies. I reported my concerns to Airbnb, describing the uncovered detector the hidden network, and the patio door. The host responded defensively, emphasizing that professional cleaning occurred between guests and that no monitoring devices were installed. Airbnb assigned a case reference number and temporarily paused the listing pending review. My daughter's orientation continued without incident. I didn't tell her the details, only that I preferred being closer to campus for the final night. Weeks later, back home, I searched the townhouse address online. Cached versions of the listing revealed a phrase that caught my attention: integrated smart monitoring system for guest security. That wording did not appear in the most recent version I'd booked. The archived webpage was dated 2 years earlier. I checked my Wi-Fi list remotely out of habit, though I knew it wouldn't show anything meaningful. The hidden network that had appeared at full signal strength during my stay was no longer visible. I clicked through images of townhouse number 17 again, noticing how carefully the ceilings were framed in the photos. I don't stay in remotely managed townhouses anymore. When I enter any rental now, I look at ceilings first, detectors, vents, anything slightly out of place. The chirping sound still returns sometimes in quiet rooms, especially late at night when appliances cycle off. It's not the volume that lingers with me. It's the timing, regular enough to feel intentional, spaced just far enough apart to remind you it's still there in townhouse number 17. If you know someone who appreciates grounded, realistic horror, share this with them and subscribe for the next account.